That night, the sky was not the same. The moon, so familiar, began to change before my eyes. Within minutes, it was bleeding red across the forest. Silence fell like a weight. No bird sang, no branch moved. And then I heard it. A howl. Ancient. Deep. It didn't echo only through the trees. It echoed inside me. Something had awakened under that crimson light, and when I finally saw the eyes of the last wolf, I understood. It wasn't just howling. It was calling. Calling me. By my name. If you feel that some stories aren't just told but lived, then stay with me until the end. Hit the like button so this pack can grow stronger. Subscribe now to Shadows of the Pack and become part of the howl. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt a call that no one else could hear? Share this video with someone who would understand the shadows. Because here, every howl hides a secret. And every secret belongs to us. The first time I saw it, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. The forest had always been my refuge. A place where the air felt heavier, where the silence between the trees carried secrets older than words. But that night, the silence was different. It wasn't the calm of nature resting. It was the silence of something watching. I looked up and the moon was no longer silver. It was bleeding. At first, a faint shimmer of red, like a bruise in the sky. Then the light thickened, spreading across the heavens until the entire forest was drowned in a crimson glow. The shadows stretched in unnatural ways, bending and twisting as if they were alive. My heartbeat echoed louder than my footsteps, and with every breath, the air tasted of iron, sharp, metallic, like blood. The animals knew it too. The forest that usually whispered with the rustle of owls and the cries of foxes had gone silent. Not even the wind dared to move the branches. And then, it came. A howl. Long. Piercing. Ancient. It did not sound like any wolf I had ever heard before. It carried something more than sound. It carried memory. It slipped into my bones, into my chest, into the very rhythm of my heart. For a moment, I forgot who I was. I forgot the path beneath my feet. All I could hear was the voice of something that should not exist anymore. I froze. My instinct screamed to run, but another part of me, something buried deeper, told me to listen. That howl was not random. It was not a beast announcing its presence. It was a summons, a call, for me. And as the sound faded, into the silence, I knew with chilling certainty I had not wandered into the forest that night by accident. I had been led there. The silence was unbearable. It wasn't the gentle quiet of night, nor the peaceful stillness of a forest asleep. This was different, heavier, oppressive, alive. The kind of silence that doesn't simply exist. It consumes. I strained my ears, waiting for the hoot of an owl, the flutter of wings, the snap of a branch beneath a deer's hooves. But nothing came. The forest, once filled with whispers and movements, had drowned in its own stillness. Even the wind had abandoned the trees. Leaves hung frozen, suspended as though time itself refused to move. My chest tightened. The air grew thick, pressing against me like a weight. Every breath I took sounded too loud, echoing in my head as if the forest itself wanted me silent. I tried to convince myself it was only fear sharpening my senses, but I knew better. This silence was not an absence of sound. It was the presence of something else. Something that had demanded the forest's voice and taken it. That was when the howl came again. Not from afar this time, but closer, slicing through the silence like a blade through flesh. It reverberated inside me, rattling my bones, shaking the marrow itself. I staggered, clutching my chest, for it didn't feel like a sound carried by air. It felt like a voice carried by blood. And in that silence, the truth revealed itself. This was not an ordinary wolf's call. There was intention behind it. Purpose. Each note stretched not into the forest but into me, as though it had known me long before I had stepped into these woods. The silence swallowed everything else, leaving only that voice inside me. My heart answered with a rhythm that wasn't my own, sinking to something older, deeper. For the first time I understood. The forest was no longer simply around me. It was inside me, and the silence that devoured it had made me its vessel. As the howl faded, I realized with a chill that I was no longer alone. Not truly. Something unseen lingered just beyond the mist, its presence undeniable, its gaze heavy upon me. The silence did not release me. It held me captive. It wanted me still. And beneath the blood-red moon I knew with terrifying clarity, I was not hearing the forest die. I was hearing it listen. The silence stretched so long that it no longer felt like absence. It felt like anticipation, as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. My footsteps crunched softly against the soil, each one echoing too loudly in the suffocating stillness. Then, without warning, the mist thickened. It rolled across the ground like a living thing, red and heavy under the bleeding moon. The deeper I walked, the harder it became to see the trees. Their outlines blurred into shapes that no longer seemed natural, as if the forest itself was twisting into something unrecognizable. My throat dried, and my chest ached as though the mist had stolen the air from my lungs. And then, through that suffocating haze, I saw movement. At first, I thought it was nothing more than a shadow, a trick of the light against the blood-colored fog. But it grew clearer, larger, until the outline of a beast stood before me. A wolf, towering, massive, its body both solid and spectral, as though it belonged to this world and yet not entirely. Its head lifted, and the mist recoiled from it, parting like curtains before a stage. And then I saw its eyes. They were not the golden or amber eyes of any wolf I had ever seen. They burned, deep, ember red, glowing not with reflection, but with their own fire. They locked on mine, unblinking, unwavering, and I felt stripped bare, as though it was not seeing me, but remembering me. The weight of its gaze was unbearable. My knees threatened to buckle, yet I could not look away. Its presence filled the clearing like thunder fills the sky. This was no simple creature of flesh and blood. This was a remnant, a shadow of an ancient truth walking in the shape of a wolf. The mist swirled tighter, wrapping around us, sealing the world beyond the clearing away. It was only the wolf and me. And then, the impossible happened. It opened its mouth, but no growl came. No sound of threat. Instead, the air itself vibrated, resonating with something older than words. The silence cracked. My chest constricted, because I realized the wolf was not howling anymore. It was speaking. And, though no sound I could name escaped its mouth, I heard it with absolute clarity. Not in the air, not with my ears, but inside my skull, inside my blood, as if the very marrow of my bones understood. It called me, not as a stranger, not as prey, but as if it had known me across lifetimes. And then, it spoke a name, not the one my parents had given me, not the one I had ever heard spoken by another living soul. Yet when it echoed inside me, I felt it, as though I had been waiting my whole life to hear it. That was when I realized the truth. I had not found the wolf. The wolf had found me. The name echoed inside me long after the sound had faded. It was not spoken aloud, yet I felt it resonate through my veins like a memory I had never lived. The wolf's eyes did not leave mine, and in that burning gaze I felt something shift. The forest itself seemed to bend around us, the mist curling tighter, as though the trees leaned closer to witness what was being unveiled. And then, it happened. The world fell away. The clearing dissolved. The mist dissolved, and in its place came visions. Not mine, not dreams, but memories. The wolf was showing me its truth. I saw a forest alive with movement, an endless expanse of shadow and moonlight. Wolves ran in great numbers, their paws pounding the earth, their howls merging into one living voice that carried across mountains. And among them walked men, not hunters, not masters, equals, brothers. There had been a time when man and wolf were bound, not by chains but by oath. They hunted together, bled together, and when one fell, the other mourned as kin. The wolf was not just beast, it was guardian. And mankind had once known this. But I saw the betrayal too. The images darkened, the sky turning black, the moon dripping red as it had that night. I saw men with fire and iron, driven by fear, breaking the pact they had sworn. Wolves hunted, slaughtered, scattered to the winds. Blood spilled where once there had been trust, and the bond was severed. The vision twisted further. I saw a single wolf standing alone, watching as his pack fell around him. His howl rose against the night, not of rage but of grief. That grief carried through the centuries, long after the last of his kind had faded, until only he remained, the last wolf, the last witness of a promise betrayed. The images tore through me like claws, leaving my chest hollow, and then the wolf's gaze returned, pulling me back into the clearing, into the crimson mist where we stood. I understood now. This was no random encounter, no chance crossing of paths. The wolf had not simply chosen me, it had summoned me to bear a burden, to remember what mankind had chosen to forget. The silence of the forest, the bleeding of the moon, the calling of my name, all of it was more than omen. It was inheritance. The wolf stepped closer, slow, deliberate, its breath visible in the crimson air. My body trembled, but not from fear. The closer it came, the more I felt the truth settle into me. I was no longer just myself. I was a link, the living bridge between what was lost and what had to be restored. And as the wolf's ember eyes burned into mine, I felt its voice one last time within my blood. Remember us, or be consumed by the silence that follows. The forest no longer felt like earth and wood. It felt like a threshold, a place where two worlds overlapped. My pulse thundered in my ears, but it was not my own rhythm anymore. It beat with the cadence of the howl, as though my heart belonged to something older, something not entirely human. The wolf stood before me, larger now, as if the mist itself bowed to its presence. Its gaze burned through me, carving away every fragile illusion of who I thought I was. And then, without sound, without words, the name returned. It echoed inside me, sharp as steel, deep as earth, eternal as the stars. A name I had never spoken, never known, yet one that wrapped around my soul like chains. It wasn't the name I had been given at birth. It was the name I had always carried in silence, waiting for this moment to be revealed. My mouth moved before I understood what I was doing. I whispered it, the name, and the forest shuddered in response. The mist coiled tighter, the moon's light blazed redder, and somewhere far beyond, I heard the answering chorus of howls. They did not come from living wolves. They came from memories, from echoes, from the lost pack itself. The last wolf stepped closer until its breath touched my face, hot against the cold night air. It lowered its head, not as predator to prey, but as elder to chosen. In its ember eyes, I saw not just recognition, but surrender. The torch was being passed, and in that moment I understood the truth. I had not been called to witness. I had been called to carry. The silence that had devoured the forest was no longer silence. It was listening, waiting, and it would follow me, haunt me, until I honored the pact that had been broken, until I became the voice of the wolves that no longer walked this earth. When the wolf finally lifted its head and released a howl into the crimson sky, I felt my lungs burn. The sound ripped through me, and before I realized it, I was howling too. The voice was not mine, but it was through me. It was them, the lost, the betrayed, the eternal. And then, as suddenly as it began, the wolf was gone. The mist fell back. The forest breathed again. The moon, still bleeding, stared down with quiet judgment. And I stood there no longer who I had been, but who I had always been meant to become. The name, the one that was never mine, was now carved into my soul, and with it came a burden I could never set down. So if you've heard the silence call your name, If you've felt a shadow watching you when no one else was near, you already know. You've already been chosen. Like this video so the pack grows stronger. Subscribe to Shadows of the Pack and add your voice to ours. And in the comments tell me, have you ever heard a call in the night that no one else could hear? Share this with someone who would understand the howl, because here, every shadow carries a secret, and every secret belongs to the pack.